This was worth waiting for. We were doing this in December, and 2 out of the 4 fell ill, and so we've rescheduled, and now we just have 1 who fell ill this time. So we're doing better. Okay. Sarah Bird, author of 9 novels and 1 book of nonfiction, just for good measure. Her latest novel, Daughter of a Queen, is inspired by the true story of Cathay Williams, the only woman to serve with the fabled Buffalo Soldiers and the first woman to enlist in the peacetime U.S. Army. Sarah's been on NPR Moth Radio Hour, storyteller, and a writer for Oprah magazine and the New York Times Sunday magazine. During her 10-year screenwriting career, she was hired to write for Paramount, CBS, Warner, National Geographic, ABC, TNT, and others. And she's here right now. Sarah Bird. Is this microphone working? I'm like, not the world's best projector or anything. My husband is recommending that I eat the mic. Okay, all right. This is kind of an exhilarating experience that I've never had before, reading with a fantastic poet and one of my 2 idols in life, Eliza Gilkinson. You know, I don't want you to think that I'm just like saying that just to say it, because besides loving her music from the first time I ever heard it, I grew up with, and I've told you this, and it's so I grew up in an Air Force family, right? And we moved a lot, so we couldn't move a lot of things, and we only moved the precious things. So we had, in my family, growing up, when I was like the 50s, 60s, 3 albums, 3 long-playing albums. My Fair Lady, Harry Belafonte, and the Easy Riders. Do you all know what that, her dad, who also wrote Bare Necessities and some, anyway. So I grew up loving Eliza Gilkinson, and now here I get to read with her tonight, so it's a thrill for me. It's quite a thrill. So we are talking about A Walk on the Wild Side, and I am going to, you know, my modification of that is, I'm going to do my kind of zombie shuffle on the wild side, and here is that story. The Texas Book Festival, when thousands of book lovers and hundreds of humans who are in my line of work, torturing the alphabet for fun and profit, converge on the Capitol grounds. In 2012, my assignment was to moderate a panel at high noon in the Senate chambers with an author whom I admire extravagantly, Ben Fountain, who wrote the best book I read that year, Billy Lynn's Long Halftime Walk, which looks at America's disturbing tendency to conflate war and spectator sports. Since I had been beavering away on my own tome above the East China Sea, concerned with how the price of empire is always borne by the young, I was doubly excited to have this conversation. Anxious about being the dim bulb amid the Illuminati, I had labored mightily over an exhaustive list of questions that ranged from penetrating to hard-hitting, just to make absolutely certain that I would be the sort of steely, unflappable examiner not seen since the Spanish Inquisition. I dropped my trusty bottle of the public speaker's secret friend, propranolol, into my purse. Like many actors and musicians, I had long relied on the blood pressure medication to ward off the pounding heart, fluttering pulse, and clammy hands of stage fright. Armed with my pills and pages of high IQ affirming questions, I entered into an almost Zen-like state of peace, which lasted, roughly until the moment I pulled into the parking lot. At which point I went directly from Zen to a meth addict state of high anxiety jitters. I snaked a trembling hand into my purse, felt for the bottle of pills, and without glancing down, extracted 2, popped them into my mouth, and dry swallowed those babies. Should I note at this juncture that rather than harmless blood pressure medications, I had accidentally tossed a bottle of Ambien into my purse. Or that I am such a lightweight that on the occasions when I do use this sleep aid, I hold one pill in my hands like a big fat squirrel with a nut and chip off the tiniest of wee tiny flakes with the tips of my incisors. Or that parking is the last thing I recall from my big day at the Texas Book Festival. Friends told me later that they had hailed me, but that I ignored them. That I had an odd blank expression on my face, and they sensed something was wrong. The word zombie appeared in some reports. From this point forward, we will have to rely on deduction and eyewitness accounts to piece together the suspect's activities on the day in question. After getting out of my car, I must have crossed several busy streets. I must have made my way over to the Capitol, and I must have ascended the fairly steep flight of stairs into the building. And I must have made it through the rigorous security screening at the entrance, because an official author/moderator badge was found later on my person. Apparently, I checked in at the private apartment just behind the house chamber that Speaker Joe Strauss was kind enough to make available to the festival as a green room, because that is where literary director Clay Smith found me after a festival volunteer reported that I, moderator, was acting strangely. Smith, besides dealing with malfunctioning microphones and prima donna authors who, seriously, true, were demanding everything from cappuccinos to Brazilian blowouts, now had a comatose moderator. In the speaker's apartment, the already beleaguered Smith found his moderator, the one who was supposed to facilitate a highbrow, paradigm-shifting discussion in half an hour, slumped on a bench, mouth open, eyes glazed. Visualize your favorite alcoholic aunt about 10 nogs into Christmas dinner. When he roused me, I insisted that, in spite of the drool, I was ready to get out there and kick some panel ass. To prove it, I'm told, I attempted to make myself a mug of hot tea. Instead of my usual milk, however, I poured in orange juice until the cup overflowed. Maybe it was the scalding tea dribbling on his feet. Perhaps it was my bovine gaze that convinced Smith that his moderator was not ready for her close-up. With assistance, Smith was able to wrangle me into a room in the back where I could achieve the total horizontality I had been teetering toward with a rhino, like a rhino with a tranquilizer dart between the eyes. Fortunately, the quick-witted Smith promptly found my sheet of questions and enlisted a substitute who filled in so beautifully that friends sitting in the balcony later wrote to tell me what a great job I had done. Michael Merschel of the Dallas Morning News even said that the animated remarks occasioned by Sarah Bird's questions were still worth talking about a couple days later. Obviously, comatose is my best moderating mode. My steadfast husband, George, was summoned to rescue me. After sleeping for nearly 24 hours, I came to, and for a few buoyant moments, shielded by Ambien's blessed amnesiac property, was bemused by the outlandish dream I had had. And by the fact that my special panel outfit was scattered all over the floor. Why, it looked as if someone had undressed me and just dumped the clothes wherever. It wasn't until I began rushing to get ready for my panel that George entered the room and sketched the outlines of the previous day for me. Each detail sent me skittering further down the ex-Catholic schoolgirl's well-greased chute into the vortex of shame. Mortification crushed me. Sympathetic friends called to offer consolation. Hey, This sounds like something from a Sarah Bird book. You can use it in your work. Ah, yes, the writer's all-purpose ticket to redemption. Use it in your work. That bucked me up until I recalled that this incident sounded like something from a Sarah Bird book because it had already been in a Sarah Bird book. The one where the thoroughly reprehensible caterer protagonist drugs a party of socialites with a mixture of grain alcohol, Welch's grape jelly, and rohypnol. That was so not the art I had ever wanted my life to imitate. We all have our daily humiliations, the first drafts of life that we fix in editing before we step out the door and face the world. But this, passing out in the state capitol, it was so irredeemably public. I consider the standard means of seeking redemption, going into rehab or finding Jesus. No, those were the easy ways out. I could not default. I defaulted again to all I had learned from the nuns. I decided that confession, a public mea culpa, was my only hope for salvation. That evening, I composed a Facebook post admitting to the world that I had roofied myself, and offering apologies and thanks to Ben Fountain. I will get over my embarrassment, I wrote, but it's going to take a while. Before I posted it, I hesitated and considered my new life as a known loser who not only was dependent on a gaudy array of chemicals to function, but could not keep her drugs straight. Sitting there, I recalled my only other experience of blacking out. It occurred more than 50 years ago when I was 19 and working as a summer intern in a hospital psychiatric unit in San Diego. Most weekends, my surfer boyfriend and his gang of woe-dude buddies would drive down from Seal Beach in the Ecoline van and pick me up from the Flophouse for Retired Merchant Marines, where I was renting a room. Then we'd head south to Mexico. In those years before cartel became synonymous with chainsaw beheading, a favorite destination was an undiscovered stretch of beach between Tijuana and Ensenada. We'd camp out on the 100-foot-high cliffs above the waves, eat Dinty Moore stew out of a can, smoke weed, and drink Ripple or some other wine-adjacent beverage. I, favorite and pertinent vintage, known to onophiles and bag ladies alike as pagan pink. I could almost finish off an entire glass without throwing up. My inability to party hardy nearly disqualified me from being an official beach bunny. Then, one memorable evening, a smoky Mexican stranger joined our merry crew. Jose Cuervo. Amazing. I loved it. Went down easy as water. The last words I recall saying were, "I found my drink." I came too late the next afternoon as I was being taken across the border in the back of the van, wedged in among a sodden pile of wetsuits. Confinement had been necessary because of my inebriated insistence upon dancing along the 100-foot cliff. The surfer boyfriend said he'd had to literally sit on me to keep me from boogalooing off the edge. In this feral band, that passed for tenderness. I was touched and interpreted such protectiveness as proof of a love eternal, one that would last until I once again walked in on him in bed with one of my friends. I had a similar loved and lost feeling, combined with crushing embarrassment, that night when I finally hit the post button on Facebook. I cringed and waited, expecting my screen to fill with invitations to 12-step with friends who'd gotten sober, maybe a few stern scripture citations from the high school pals who were wont to impart such advice, whether requested or not. Or worse, nothing. Simply the silence of friends politely turning away. Instead, dozens of posts carried well wishes from generous souls, all with the same message. We're human, we make mistakes. As I crawled out of the spiral of shame, I thought about that long ago boyfriend sitting on me, and tears filled my eyes. Was it because over 50 years had passed since I was a teenager dancing on a cliff? Or was it because I had burned my mouth and ruined my blouse with scalding orangey brown tea? Maybe a bit of both. But mostly it was because I realized what a small price a little humiliation is for learning how many friends stand ready to catch you when you fall. Oh.